I've been thinking about this recently is why was anime not as big in the early 2000s than it is now? This is a question that I really have been thinking about. And there's some comedic sense to say that anime just seemed very nerdy. So why was it so nerdy back then, but now is seen cool now? Kids these days, they watch anime. They think of Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, Dragon Ball. Kids nowadays find it to be very cool to like that sort of stuff. But back then, as a kid for me, people didn't really like it as much. Especially, in the early 2010s. You're thinking about a time where Discord was not even thought of. So it wasn't really that much embraced. I remember when the anime boom first started, when I first watched my couple first anime, they were from animes from way from 2006 to all the way to 2012. Now than ever, you see a lot of animes do well because of good animation. So thinking about that, maybe it's because of the boom that happened when Crunchyroll available and the internet started to spread like wildfire, that people have gotten access to all kinds of anime media. And I think that's where it all stemmed down from. But why was it always not seen as something cool back then? I remember kids back then, I really wouldn't share it much because it was something that not many people watched at my age, which was like 11 or 12 years old. Like, I didn't hear a lot of kids talking about that. The things they talked about were, I remember specifically a lot of kids talking about Big Time Rush and Disney Channel and stuff like that. You hear a lot more Western media back then than Japanese media because it was just so foreign. It was a foreign thing that never graced upon our thoughts back then as kids. But nowadays, it's more prevalent now than ever. If you tell a kid, hey, have you seen Rosario Vampire? Obviously, the kid would probably say no because all they know is like Demon Slayer. Well, have you seen anime? Oh, yeah, I've seen Demon Slayer. Okay. Have you seen Kill a Kill? No, I probably haven't. That goes without saying that the Japanese media has always been there. So why wasn't it really well produced? Well, I think it always stems down from the expansion of the internet. Without the internet, there wasn't really much capability to network with a lot of people throughout the entire world. That knowledge, you can estimate that people really didn't contact much foreign people back then. Good example of this would be Toradora, for example. In that anime, they use cellular phones. So, like, they had the flip phones rather than the touch phones. In modern anime, now they use touch phones to communicate. Like, a good example is Fuka. If you watch that anime, they use touch phones. They don't actually use flip phones. That's a thing of the past. Like, what the heck are you living in the Nokia era? No, no, people are not living in the Nokia era. They're living in the Apple era, except they call it Pear so they can avoid copyright. But that's just a good example of like, whoa, very cool. And another good example of modern technology being a part of anime is Oshinoko. They also use a lot of social medias. With the expansion of the internet, it's made it so that people can express their love for anime behind a screen. So now you have a capability of, yes, I can express myself without having someone be right in front of me and say, man, that anime is total dog shit. I know one anime I would probably get hate for saying that is good is, Rosario Vampire, for example. That it doesn't have much of a solid ending, but it still holds up to this day. There's a couple of them that don't hold up to this day that are pretty old, but there are some that are pretty old that still hold up to this day, like for example Canon or Clannad. Those anime hold up to this day. I watched those as a kid, but back then, if you told someone that you liked it, they would not know what you're talking about. For example, Suzuka, that anime. not many people know about it. I'd tell anyone in person what that anime is. Have you seen it? Nope. I think it's because obviously the anime was very old. That anime was back in, I don't remember, the early 2000s, which was like the internet never existed like it does today. So I think with the expansion of the internet, it's paved the way for having people express more of their opinions towards anime or even Japanese culture as a whole. You have situations where now people are trying to move to Japan and express it a lot more than now. You see people wearing a lot more anime merchandise, whether it's fan made or whether it's officialized. People love expressing anime now more than ever. When I first started watching anime, it was on my 3DS. I could not express on that sort of like device because on YouTube for the 3DS, it wasn't able to let you make comments. So now you're in a situation where you would be able to watch episodes, except you weren't able to comment on anything or express that to anyone. I mean, I had somewhat of friends back then as a kid, but back then the kids then didn't really know of those animes, and even if I did tell them about those anime, they probably wouldn't have known anything. I remember my friends back in the day. I mean, this was probably like when I was like 9 or 8 years old. Back in elementary school, people would talk about Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z a little bit, like sprinkle bits, but those were like anime on Toonami. I remember a lot of people watching anime through there. I mean, you have good examples of anime back in the 90s, Sailor Moon, Evangelion, um, Cardcaptor Sakura. You have a lot of good anime. And then there's a lot of unknown ones like Suzuka, for example, or yeah, I keep pointing in the wrong direction. Suzuka, for example. Many people don't really like older anime because they're so in tune with like the newer, and I'm going off topic, but they like the newer animations because it's more fluid. That plays a contribution to why anime is so big now rather than, back then, because animation has severely developed more and more over time, and now animation has gotten so good in anime that it's eye candy. I mean, a good example of that is Oshinoko and the new Demon Slayer series. I've never watched Demon Slayer, but I give them a lot of credit for mixing 2D and 3D, and it takes a lot of work to produce those sort of things. Two big factors for why anime is very good but was very seen as nerdy back then was because the animation wasn't as developed as it is now, and also the boom of the internet. Those two factors play a big role to why anime is very prevalent now as it is now, but wasn't back then. Some animations from older anime back then, some have very unique art style that still hold up to this day, like Cowboy Bebop, like the other 90s animes that I had explained. Some of the animation still holds up. And there's some anime from the 90s that aren't as popular as those anime I just named that still hold up to this day, but you know, they just didn't look as good as those other anime that I had named. I love anime from far and wide, from any age. Anime has been existing since the 60s, and it's never been bigger than it is now. It's really cool to see that people love this. I mean, there's expos based on anime itself. LA Anime Expo. I mean, I've been to many conventions already to either meet voice actors or actresses or even just people who design, who create these anime arts, fan arts, all of the above. It's just so cool to see how people have seen certain anime. I mean, good example. There's this old anime from the early 2010s called Black Cat. If you've never seen Black Cat, I would highly recommend it. It's a decent watch. It's not the best watch, it's not the worst watch, but it's a decent watch. A couple of months ago, I went to go to this convention and I think it was my last convention that I've been to, and I was able to get a fan art of Black Cat, and it's still up there. I wish I could show him, but I don't want to just go take it down. It's of the main character, which was like, what the heck? I've never seen fan art like that, you know? So there are some few people that, were very big anime fans back then and know the feeling of, damn, if only those kids could have lived through those days where anime was seen as nerdy, and they would have really been hidden in a corner because we all felt that way back then. It was such a cool experience to have that sort of hidden desire that no one else knew about. It was such a good feeling. And you'd imagine, like, man, you can't share those sort of interests to other people. Well, no, we honestly didn't feel bad about that. We loved it in plain sight, but also hidden away that no one knew about. I miss those golden days of anime where you could have that secret interest in anime that no one knew about because no one knew anime existed back then like they do now. Even with my own parents, they see that I'm infatuated with anime, but they don't really know anime like that. I mean, I've tried showing them, and I've tried doing a past video with my mom where she explained, I don't like anime. It's just not the culture I grew up upon, and that's okay. They even knew that I was somewhat into anime, not in my early days of knowing anime, but definitely like throughout the years they saw more and more how more apparent it became. I hopefully explained it pretty well of why anime is pretty big as it is now, but was seen as nerdy back then. It was the very big question. Why was anime seen as nerdy back then, but it's seen as cool now? I mean, you love it now? Whoa, very cool. And you get hate for it if you don't like it now, which is kind of weird because it was the complete opposite back then. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment down below your guys' thoughts and opinions. I have been Noble Oath, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace.